Hi there, welcome to this build of a 40-inch wingspan Keil Kraft Gypsy. Now this is a lovely design by Bill Dean from 1949. Now you can see we're almost finished, and I'll keep saying that, but we've got the wings. We covered those a few videos ago, and we've got this blue on top, which I wasn't overly happy with the tissue, but I quite like the look actually now. It's kind of grown on me. We've got the water slide transfers on. We've got a lovely dark matte black on the underside, and we've got black on the fin, and we've got a blue top to the tailplane and a black underside. And we're going to carry on that theme and get the fuselage covered in this video. Now you can see we've got the windscreen on, which we did in the last video, and the video before that I got the whole of the fuselage covered in laminating film, and I was really pleased with how that's looking. So now we're going to carry on with that theme and get the black tissue over this fuselage. And I've kind of toyed with the idea of having a blue stripe, and I think I only toyed with that idea, I guess, is because it seemed a little bit bold to have it completely black, but I am going to go for the completely black fuselage. And I think I said earlier that will tie in with the band on the wings and with the fin. So I'm going to be using this black tissue. It's quite a nice light water strength tissue. I just got this off of eBay in the UK, and it was advertised as it was a recycled tissue paper, and I bought a sample, and it seemed okay. The lighter colours, like I say, I'm not overly happy with, but this black seems to go on really nice. Be interesting to see if it fades in the sun, although I do keep my models mostly places like this where there's no windows. So anyway, let's get this fuselage covered. Right, well, this tissue comes folded up, so the first thing I want to do is get it nice and flat and smooth. So I'm just going to use my covering iron, I mean it's about 120 degrees C, something like that, and I'm just going to give this a nice iron. Now it doesn't need to be flat and smooth to go onto the fuselage. As soon as I get the water on it, it will start to flatten out and it'll be fine. The reason I want to get the creases out and get this nice and flat is because it will be so much easier to cut it out, to lay it on the bench and to get nice accurate cuts. If I'm trying to work around creases and things like that, it's just going to make it harder to do. So I'll just spend a few minutes just getting this nice and flat. Okay, well, first off we need to look at the sequence that we're going to cover this in, and I think it's going to take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pieces. So we're going to do this top edge first. We're then going to do the whole of the underside second. I think then we're going to have a go at doing the whole of the sides, so that's 2 and 3. We're going to cut out those windows first, and a nice straight line along the nose here, and then the final piece will be on this nose. Now I'm not sure we can do that in one go because of the compound nature of the curve, but we'll face that when we come to it. So first thing we're going to do is cut out a piece of tissue for the top and a piece of tissue for the bottom. Now I'm going to cut the tissue, and hopefully so it's just got a few mil overlap either side, so we can just lap that down. And then once we've got that down, we can just put the side piece on that overlaps that piece coming down and trim it nice and flush with the top. So the first thing we're going to do is think about the tissue. We're going to have, because tissue's got a grain, and the grain on this tissue is running lengthways. To be honest, there isn't much of a grain on this, but there is a slight grain running lengthways. So I'm going to put the fuselage onto the tissue. I've got a really nice sharp scalpel, and I'm going to line this up on this side, and I'm going to carefully trim around this so I've got a piece exactly the same, right size for that little bit of an overlap. So I'm going to do that for the top and the bottom. really sharp scalpel, like I said, and if I use my straight edge to put on here, like that, that will just hold the tissue while I'm cutting it, and that will just make it a little bit more secure. Once we've got that done, we'll come back and we'll have a look at starting the tissue process. I'm not going to go through the whole of this showing the technique in minute detail, because I've done that with the wings and the tail, and or maybe not the tail actually, but the wings certainly, and I've got lots of videos which show this technique, and I will link to those in the description below this video. I'll link to some videos showing not only the tissue going on, the technique I use, but also this 38 micron laminating film. And something I should have said earlier, if you want the plans for this, the plans can be downloaded from the AutoZone website free of charge, and I'll provide a link to that as well. So right, I'll get this cut up and we'll get our first piece of tissue on. Right, well, I've cut up the tissue and I've done a piece for the underside and a piece here for the top, but I've had to change the plan a little bit because I was going to have one big piece. It was difficult to cut with the legs, but more importantly my tissue wasn't long enough, so I'm going to just do another piece for the front here. I'll do this and then I'll just put a piece on the front there, and the join under here is neither here nor there, nobody will see it. So we've got the tissue. I put in a slit here so it will go either side of the skid, tail skid or underfin. And what I'm going to do now, well, I'm going to spray it with just plain old water, get it nice and wet, smooth it out, get it exactly where I want it. I need to be a little bit careful here because there's a hatch with no film. So a little bit of water is probably going to drip through there, but that'll be fine. And there's another hole here to allow me to get the rubber motor peg in place so I can see it. Now, so I'm going to spray it with water and then I'm going to polyurethane it. And it's a water-based polyurethane I'm using. Now, I'm using this Wilco brand. Unfortunately, the company no longer exists, so you can't get this, but it's just a generic water-based polyurethane. And I've taking it out the tin and I keep it in this jar. It's just easier for opening, closing, and keeping it nicely sealed. So let's get this on. So we'll just move this into the right position, which is about there. This has got wet strength, so we can move it around, and as I said, there's a little bit of an overlap. You can just see that. So I think that is about right. Just now, this tissue is going to expand a little bit. I'll say a little bit, might be more than a little bit, but anyway, we'll get this nice and wet. We have to be careful with these tails here down at this back end, because these will be quite fragile because they're small essentially. So a little bit more water on there. I don't want to get too much here where this this hole is. So now what we need to do is just smooth this out, and you can see that already starting to become smoother. If I just move that around a little bit, so we just smooth the wrinkles out. There's a lot of water at the moment, but we'll mop up a lot of that in a bit. And once I've got the major wrinkles out of this, I will leave it just for a few minutes to make sure that it's expanded fully. And I need to be really careful with this bit over here, or we're going to rip it, where there's no support from the laminating film. I should have maybe left. Got enough overlap? Now let's move that over a little bit. I should have maybe left the laminating film and cut that afterwards, but it doesn't really matter, that'll be fine. So let's just pull this down here to get rid of these wrinkles. Now there's not much overlap there, but that'll be fine. There's a little bit more on this side, but if it was a lighter colour or a different colour going on, I would be more concerned. But this black, I do know, will seam really well and won't show very much as a join or a seam, so I think that'll be fine. So we can see we're getting this done now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this for a few minutes. I'm then going to smooth it out, and once it's all in position, I will just use a bit of kitchen roll and I'll just dab it, and then we'll get on with the polyurethaning. Okay, left it a few minutes and it's all nice now. There's no major wrinkles. I think that will be enough water. And what I'm going to do now is, as I said, I'm just going to mop this, or blot it I suppose, and just get off the bulk of the water. And you can see hopefully there the difference of where it's been blotted and where it hasn't. Now it'll just allow the polyurethane to soak in a little bit better, and it won't be as diluted. So we have to be careful when we're putting this tissue on, because if you're not careful when you do it, it's fine like this. When you take it off, you have to be careful that it doesn't pull the tissue with it. So you see it's taking off quite a lot of the water. Again, need to be careful of these saggy areas, because they will be where there's no film, laminating film, because they will be really vulnerable to just sticking the brush through. Because this has got wet strength, but it's not really really strong. It's not as strong as some of the Asuka Japanese tissues that I've used in the past, or the Asuka tissue I've used. So, but let's get this polyurethane on. So all we're going to do is just brush this on, and probably better to brush it away to the outside, because then we're stretching the tissue, if anything, rather than sort of bringing it in and introducing wrinkles. But up to this point I guess we'll go that way. Right, now don't want this on too thick. This is a rubber model, so it's not going to be covered in diesel fuel and oil and glow fuel or whatever. It's so we don't have to worry quite as much about sealing this, as long as it's actually held on and held on well. So I'm going to just go around the edges here. I'm not going to do the middle bit. There we go. What we'll do is we'll give this 2 coats. We'll give this first coat and then another one when we've got the whole fuselage covered. We'll do it all in one go probably. So I'll get on and do this, and then we'll come back and have a look. Whoops, that's where that soft bit is, so I need to be careful about that. So easy to forget when it all looks the same, but that's going on really nice and looking great. We've got to do these side pieces as well, just to make sure that we've got that done. But yeah, as I said, I'll get on and do this, and then we'll come back in a bit and see how we're getting on. Right, well I thought it'd be good for a quick update. I've done the top, that's dried, lovely. I've done the underside in 2 pieces. There's a seam there, you can just about see that. And I've also done that side of the sub fin, or the sub fin skid. Now I'm just cutting a piece of tissue for the side, and I've got this piece which I've cut it so that this top edge will fit really nicely along the top of the fuselage, and then it will overhang at the bottom, and once the polyurethane is almost dry, I'll just go across and trim it. But what I've done is, before I fitted the windows, I just drew the shape of the windows. Hopefully you can see that, and I've cut that out, and you can see it here on the bench. And what I'm going to do now is just cut around where those windows are. I'm going to put a new blade in here. I'm just going to cut the windows out, and then we can fit it on there. Right, well I've now got that cut out, so we've just got to really carefully remove the tape, and I'm using kind of low tack magic tape, so it comes off hopefully fairly easily. There we go. So we've got that off, And now hopefully we have our template which we can put on here. Now the trick is to line this up and keep it in the one position without it moving. There's also a slight issue in the fact that this tissue is probably going to expand a little bit, so that might sort of mess things up a little bit, but we'll see. I much prefer to put the tissue on top of the windows, I've said this before, because I think you just get such a much nicer finish than then putting the tissue on and sticking the acetate on afterwards. Now again, I've had to put a seam here because the tissue's not long enough, and I mean I could have put it here, which is more hidden under the wing, but I thought it'd be nice to do the windows as one. So I will get this done now, and I'm going to hold this in place really carefully when I spray it with water to make sure that it doesn't move. And I might just cut out a very little bit, a nick there, just so it'll go forward a little bit because of this dowel here, carbon fibre dowel for the wing bands. So just a slight bit forward. But I will get on and do this, and we'll have a look once it's done. Right, well I've got this in position now, and I've really wet this so I could float it to get those wrinkles out, because I didn't want to start picking it up too much and stretching it too much just because of these thin bits around here, and I didn't want to risk ripping it. But that's looking pretty good now. There's still a few little, well, I don't know whether they're wrinkles or creases. There's a little bit of a mark there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to dab this now and or blot it, get off a lot of the excess water. Need to be really careful around the windows. There we go. In fact, that's looking nice now. It's starting to blot. That mark that was a little bit of a wrinkle there has actually gone now. That's really nice. It could have just been water that was perhaps trapped underneath it. So I'll just carry on blotting this, and then I'm going to get the polyurethane on. But I'm really pleased with how that's looking. It's gone nice around around the window here, and yeah, no, that's looking nice. So I mean, I could leave this a little bit if there was something that I wasn't quite happy with, and as the tissue dries it will start to shrink a little bit, but I think we'll get the polyurethane on there. Okay, just one final thing now before I leave this to dry, and that is to say I'm actually trimming this now while it's really wet. I've literally just finished putting the polyurethane on. It's not something I like doing because it's fraught with danger and you can rip the tissue, but if you just have a really sharp scalpel you can just go along and do it. I think it's far better than leaving it on this particular job. There we go. Now if you don't cut it off like this, what you need to do, and what I started to do here, I don't know whether you can see that down at that end, let me just move it. I'd cut the tissue into I'd started to cut lines along the tissue to divide it up, because if you don't do that this will start to shrink and it will pull off. So, but I changed my mind, not doing those cuts. I'm just going to trim the whole lot off, and that will give me a much neater finish. There we go, that looks really nice, that joint there now. So I'll cut this last bit off and then we'll leave it to dry. Well, I've really been cracking on with this now, and I'm really pleased with how it's looking, and I really started to like this black. Now I've got the sides done, and this side here is still a little bit tacky in places. I've also got this side done. I've literally just put the polyurethane on that front piece there, and I've done quite a narrow overlap and done that on the one of those uprights there, the 1/8 piece of balsa, so it doesn't actually look too bad. It doesn't look like a big join or anything. Still got this little piece here, and I'll be doing that tomorrow. I don't want to lay it on its side because of this side being still a little bit sticky. Now the big question is, and the final piece is the nose, and I think we may be able to get this on in one piece. So that's what I'm going to try tomorrow, and if not, we'll have to maybe put a slit in the front or something, but hopefully we can get it done in one piece. And then I've just got a few little slots to put in for the push-pull cables, the tail dethermalizer so it goes in, and we've just got the holes on the bottom. We've got a hatch just here so we can get to the radio gear, and then we're done. So anyway, I'm going to leave this now so it's nice and dry for tomorrow, and then we'll get this thing finished. Well, I've now got this finished, or at least covered. Got the fuselage fully covered in this black, and I'm really pleased with how it's looking. This nose section went on really nice, didn't give me any trouble at all, and it's gone nicely around the acetate for the windscreen. You can see we've got a lovely matte black on this, really nice. It's a little bit patchy in places just because of the nature of putting on the polyurethane in the tissue in different stages. It still needs one thin coat all over at the same time, and that will just even everything out. I mean, to be honest, you can hardly see the marks on it. It's just where it's a little bit different, just where, like I say, because I've done it in kind of a mosaic rather than all at once. But I am really pleased with that, and I'm glad I've done it in this black. And you can see I've done the hatch. I still need the balsa hatch to do. I need to cover that, and I've got the slot there so I can get to the peg, and we've done the slots there for the dethermalizer and the push-pull cables coming out of the back of the fuselage. Now we've got to have a look at it with the wings on, haven't we, and the tail, so just see what this design looks like. So we'll just put the tail on. Can we see that? Yep, that's in shot. Let's just move it a little bit, and then we've got the wings. There we go. I really like that. I think that looks lovely. I'm so pleased that I decided to go with the bold black on the fuselage rather than putting stripes on and kind of breaking it up. I might think about a water slide transfer of Keil Kraft on the side of the fuselage, but I don't want to over bling it really, so I probably won't. I will probably just leave it as it is now, and I am really looking forward to getting this model finished. All I've got to do now is pull it all together, which I think is the last thing I've got to do really, and will be the next video in this build. Is I've got a box of bits here with the servos and the wheels, the cables. So the next video we're going to pull it together and get this thing airfield ready, I think. And I think we'll do some test glides as well in a subsequent video after that. But anyway, I'm going to draw this video to a close, and I hope you've enjoyed this covering process, and I hope you like the matte black as well. I know it's bold and perhaps a little bit different, but anyway, I hope you'll come back and see how we get on in the next video, pulling this lovely 40-inch wingspan Keil Kraft Gypsy together and getting it ready for those test glides. Thanks very much for watching.